See, Rug Delver versus Bug. Chris Marshall on your right, Pikula on your left. Should be a fun one here.
Yeah.
I haven't really gotten to see Chris play very much. He doesn't really get to, full-time job. He's got a wife and kids.
Yeah, a life.
Yes.
Outside of the Matrix.
But life in the
It's a damn shame when that happens.
Yeah, life in the Matrix isn't so bad itself. So.
I just talked to him this round as I had the pleasure of the break. He was actually really hoping to get into this top 8. He really wants to win here. Not only to make this top 8, which would be sweet, but what he really wants, what he's got his eyes set on, is the Invitational in Somerset. Kind of in his backyard, really, and a chance to play Legacy for higher stakes on a bigger stage, So he really needs that qualification, and easiest way to get it is just for him to top 8 here.
You gotta spike it. That's all you gotta do.
He's definitely on his way. It's 6-0.
That's for sure. Once this match can probably double draw.
Yeah. Very close, getting close.
But he's got a man standing in his way, and the man standing in his way is also 6-0, and he's got a turn 1 Death Right Shaman, does Chris Marshall. So we are underway here in round number 7. Chris going to untap. He's going to take a draw step. We see that is a expensive land.
Yes.
That is. That's a pretty expensive lightning bolt, too.
And he's already cast, more than my life's worth in the first turn of the game. No, but I will say that the play versus draw, the die roll is super, super important for the Rug Delver deck. Having lost that draw, he gets to, or Chris Marshall gets to play that Death Right, which Chris Pikula has to bolt instead of using a Ponder or maybe playing a Delver or holding up, Stifle, those types of things that he really wants to be doing. He really gets to establish his mana base when, as we've said before, Rug Delver is basically a mana denial deck.
Glorified mana denial deck. It does
it does some other things too.
Yeah, not a ton of other things though. It really wants to mess with your mana. Take a look at Marshall's deck list here. He's got 4 copies of Death Right Shaman, 4 Dark Confidant, 4 Tarmogoyf, 2 Snapcaster Mage, 2 from Daily Click as his creature base. Spells: Brainstorm, Swords of Plowshares, Thoughtseize, Inquisition of Ko's Life, 1 Ponder, 1 Counterspell, 4 Jace the Mind Sculptor, and 2 Liliana the Veil. So this is definitely one of those good card legacy decks.
Yes.
As we're going to see Chris start off with a Brainstorm.
Yeah. These types of decks basically are if I can have my mana and get to the mid to late game, then my powerful cards are going to take over. But the mana is a little sketchy at times, and if the Rug Delver deck can disrupt that mana base, then it's actually going to have quite a bit of difficulty since its mana costs are so spread out. And we look at Chris Pikula's deck. You can see the old school in this deck. It is just all 4s straight up with the full Dazes and Pierces, and then 1 Chain Lightning, 1 Scour to fill out so that he can get down to 18 lands.
Alright, so Tropical Island was searched for via Polluted Delta, and we'll see what he's going to go with here. We see a Nimble Mongoose is the choice of the day. Chris Marshall going to tap, he's going to draw. We got a Ponder.
Yeah, the Nimble Mongoose, one of the harder threats to deal with. Tarmogoyf, one of the most efficient answers to Nimble Mongoose. So Chris Pikula now looking for an evasive threat or a way to deal with that Tarmogoyf.
You guys do see the Tarmogoyf die on the screen. We'll slide the Tarmogoyf die on the screen just a little farther for you guys so you can see that it is a 3-4 moving forward and could get a little bit bigger. You see Pikula has drawn a Stifle, going to play a Volcanic Island.
So, 3 mana. Chris Marshall has 3 lands. I shouldn't say 3 mana because one is a fetch land and Pikula can stifle that. But, with Tarmogoyf of his own, that's not too bad. But that is sort of the point where the Rug Delver doesn't want the Bug player to get to that point.
Yes.
This game is already sort of slipping out of Pikula's hands, having been on the draw, having to spend his first turn bolting a Death Right, having no real follow-up, and no double Wasteland and Stifle draw after that, which is the type of thing that you need to pull back ahead when you are that far behind. So Pikula's going to have to sort of fight on a different axis, just swarm some creatures and try and overwhelm the Tarmogoyf, which looks like that's what he is doing. He's got a Delver. He just pondered, so presumably that's going to flip, and he has a Tarmogoyf in his hand to cast next turn, still holding up that Stifle for the fetch land. So definitely not a bad turn for Pikula, but he's still going to have to make things happen, and soon.
We see a Swords to Plowshares among other cards over there from Marshall. He's got a counterspell in his hand as well, and he's going to serve in with Tarmogoyf. Makes me believe that he probably has another one.
Yep, he might think that, you know, he can use his Swords to Plowshares, but unless he wastelands that Volcanic first, his fetch land is actually going to get stifled, and he's not going to be able to cast that Swords to Plowshares.
Can't stifle fast enough. Yep.
Which is actually what we see happen here. Now, do you want to spend your...
So he's another fetch land. Okay.
Oh, okay, there you go. So he's got the white anyway. And he's happy to trade that fetch land for a stifle now because, you know, he had the backup anyway. That's one less card that Pikula has. You can't use that stifle later on, say, a key Jace activation or what have you. And, or just like pitch it to a Force of Will, put it back with a Brainstorm. You know, it's just like, I'll take this 1-for-1 with this land I didn't need anyway. And by cracking it first before playing his other land, he really baited that. I mean, what's Pikula going to do? Like, not use his stifle there?
Yep.
But he definitely did not get the maximum value, and Marshall playing that turn quite efficiently, effectively. And here we see a Force of Will drawn. He kept that on top to flip the Delver, but Delver's gone.
Yeah,
long gone.
No flips today. So now Nimble Mongoose is going to come across for 1. Ping. Here comes Tarmogoyf, so they can stare at each other for a little while, as Marshall cannot cast a counterspell in his hand due to the Bayou and Underground Sea being his lands that are untapped. He's going to draw a Scrubland for the turn. And you see Ponder, Counterspell, Wasteland, and Scrubland. So Ponder to help search.
How awesome is this Scrubland, Bayou, Wasteland as 3 of his 5 lands?
Yeah.
Just don't cast the counterspell in his hand. Like, these are the types of things we're talking about when these mana bases are a little sketchy.
Yeah,
and
I mean, the land is great in fetch lands and all these dual lands and everything. You know, it makes it so that you can have a beautiful mana base, but you can also, you know, have some trouble, especially when Wasteland is as prominent as it is in the format.
yeah, and like if you draw the lands that you fetch in corner case scenarios as like one of your first few lands that you need for mana, then it can definitely be awkward. Now, here, Pikula has basically no option but to Force of Will the Swords to Plowshares on his Tarmogoyf, and I believe his last card, or one of his last cards, is a Lightning Bolt, which, you know, when your Tarmogoyf attacks Marshall and threatens to bounce off of Marshall's, then the Lightning Bolt can finish it off. So, actually not a bad sequence here from Pikula, and we see Chris Marshall once again not being able to hold up Counterspell, but he does not play into that sequence, just taking the attack. Very well played.
And I was wondering if he was actually going to be scared to block or not here, as Pikula kind of sent in. It's almost like a bluff attack, right? Where it's just like, all right, do I have Lightning Bolt or not? Do you dare find out? Like, how bad do you need this Tarmogoyf? The answer is pretty bad right now.
Not only is it holding off Chris's Tarmogoyf, but also the Nimble Mongoose. And, you know, even if he doesn't have the Lightning Bolt, he can still make that attack. As you said, it's almost a free roll attack, because if Marshall is afraid of that Lightning Bolt and then takes it, what's going to do? Attack back? Like, you're not racing Pikula's board. So it is a very nice attack and a very nice block as well.
So Wasteland's going to come. Tropical Island. Time to go bye-bye. See a Thoughtseize with the draw step for Marshall. I think Marshall's thought is, you know, he's basically putting Chris on Lightning Bolt. So, you know, should I Thoughtseize the Lightning Bolt or Counterspell Lightning Bolt? Should I be proactive and take 2, or be reactive and just counter it?
Yep, and it looks like he's choosing the reactive route. And there's the one-of Thoughtscour. I like Thoughtscour as a one-of. It's you know, I mean, it's just a cycler, so you're not losing that much if you randomly draw it. But then the value of being able to surprise pump your Nimble Mongoose more than your opponent thought you could mid-combat can be really, really powerful. And you can use it with Brainstorm and Ponder as a sort of semi-shuffle effect to get rid of unwanted cards.
So you see the Tarmogoyfs, they run into each other, a little bit of standoff. Chris tries that Lightning Bolt that we knew it had, and Marshall has the Counterspell that we knew he had as well. Yep. So, we see Marshall draw a card for the turn. It's a Tropical Island. Marshall, again, does have 4 Jace the Mind Sculptor to draw to, which can break this parity, as you see Pikula draws a Spell Pierce for the turn.
Yeah, he does have 4 Spell Pierces and 4 Dazes.
Wow, that's a different build.
Yeah.
And
wow.
Speaking of which...
Look at that. And actually...
Yep, he's going to lead with Thoughtseize.
Yep, he perfectly waited with a Thoughtseize. There was no reason to cast it earlier. Jig is up, get that out of here, and Hase is home.
So now you're going to see that land, and here's the Jace the Mind Sculptor, and this is a card that we've seen it before, we'll see it again. Turns him around, Fate Seal, going this way. Takes a look at the top card, puts that on the bottom, and we'll see if If Pikula wants to sacrifice that fetch land, I'll leave it there. It says happy to leave it there. There's a Stifle off the top.
Once again, more cards that are really good in the early game when you're trying to tempo them out, but are just comically bad top decks once you enter this, turn 7 and 8 phase of the game.
So now Jace may do its Brainstorm thing, or it might do its Fate Seal thing. We're going to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's at 5, so you kind of want to push it to 7 so that a sort of alpha with both the creatures at it plus a bolt doesn't finish it off. Once it's at 7, then theoretically you can start brainstorming, but once it's at 7, you're like, hey, it's already at 7. Let's just try and kill him.
Let's keep going up. I got control of his draw step. His timer going off the top there for Chris.
I feel like Jace might go into a different mode now.
Things may change. Things may change. Thoughtseize is the draw here for Marshall.
Thoughtseize with a Jace with a ton of counters is actually awesome because you just use it as a removal spell. Bounce a Tarmogoyf and then Thoughtseize it away from his hand.
Yeah, it seems like Marshall is agreeing with most of your lines here, and there's a Stifle to counter that. So that's
It's gonna stop it for a turn.
Yeah, a turn might be all that Pikula needs right now, honestly.
Yeah.
So here's a Brainstorm from
Gotta
Marshall.
find an answer to protect that Jace.
2 and 3. And I think he just drew 3 lands off of that.
One was a Deathrite, so that is a chump blocker.
Okay.
And then, yeah, a couple lands. I think it was like a Tar Pit and a Fetch, maybe. Oh, and he puts back the Thoughtseize. Oh, I guess he's, not shuffling away, so not the biggest of deals there. And Deathrite Shaman, very likely just in chump mode here. Protect the Jace at all costs.
You must protect the Queen.
Absolutely.
Here comes Tarmogoyf and friends. I think that's all going to go there, and yet you see a block here. Going to sacrifice the Mongoose. That's going to get eaten. Jade's going to go down to 2. 2 Tarmogoyfs for Pikula, 1 for Marshall. But Marshall has the breaker there in Jace Mind Sculptor.
Yep. I mean, I have to assume that his fate. He just draws the Thoughtseize, bounces, and Thoughtseizes now. He has the Tar Pit as well, so theoretically that could be either a chump blocker or an attacker. It looks like, yep, that is a bounce. And ooh, he ordered his cards differently. So he actually has the fetch land in his hand, and it looks like he is going to Race Town.
I wonder if he ordered those. It feels like he was surprised when he drew his card that he thought it was a Thoughtseize. That's what it felt like to me, right? Where he
that's kind of what it looked like. Yeah,
he bounced his guy and then he looked at his card. He's like, "Oh, that's Mystery Forest." That's what it really, honestly felt like. I think it may have just been a mistake, and now he's just going to sacrifice this away because he doesn't want to bounce the guy now.
Yeah, sacrifice your Jace. Yeah. I mean, much better off brainstorming. But yeah, I mean, without that Thoughtseize, bouncing the Tarmogoyf is.
We may have misread, what his hand was. It could be our mistake on our end too, that maybe the Thoughtseize wasn't in his hand when he was brainstorming. I thought I saw one as well, just like
no, it was. I'm pretty confident it was because of the turn before. Remember, he went to bounce and Pikula stifled. I think that line makes sense for him to have the Thoughtseize, but he did put the fetch line on top, and now this is probably follow Jace. Yeah, it's the only thing that ever is. Yep. If a player is actively choosing to sacrifice their Jace, it's either another Jace or you're dead.
Yes.
Those are the two options.
Now we're going to get a Brainstorm here. So now Marshall can actually get a little deeper into his deck. You see a Thoughtseize, a Deathrite Shaman, and a Snapcaster Mage. So now's not the worst time to actually cast that Thoughtseize.
Yep. There's that sequence that he kind of was setting up earlier. And Pikula, not much option. The 2 mana for the Pierce.
Yeah, staring at another Spell Pierce. These Spell Pierces are very untimely. Again, Spell Pierce is fantastic when you're this mana denial deck and trying to cut their resources. But Marshall has 7 lands in play, which if you're Pikula, that's not something you ever want to happen. Yeah. As here's a Delver of Secrets off the top for Chris. We know the last card in his hand is a Spell Pierce, and there's a land as well. So Marshall is going to have more dominance, more decisions to make with Jace the Mind Sculptor in play.
Well, I mean, we know that one of his top cards was Snapcaster Mage, so he could very easily just, bounce one of the coolest creatures, Snapcaster, Thoughtseize, and do that again. Or he can look to go the more beatdown route and start, plow the Tarmogoyf, bounce the Delver, attack, and really start trying to get after Pikula's life total, which is fairly low.
Sure, just want to close it out.
Yeah. I mean, you're at 7 life, so I mean that is good. The chunks of 3 are what are important for bolts and delvers and mongies. They all hit for 3, so 3s and 6s are the magic numbers. So being at 7 is definitely a good spot. And sure enough, it is plow. Oh, it's plow delver and bounce Tarmogoyf. Sure, I mean pretty much the same thing.
We might see bounce Tarmogoyf activate Tar Pit, get in.
Yeah. Does
Got Fate
Seal,
Okay.
that works too. A less aggressive line, but you know, you have a little safety blanket of being able to control their draws a bit. Do we know if Marshall has another source of Plowshares? Because one line that a lot of players miss in these spots is actually bounce Jace bounce your own Snapcaster.
Sure.
For another rebuy.
Sure.
I think that might be a legitimate thing to look to.
Clear that Tarmogoyf out of the way for good, and then just start bashing in with everybody.
Yeah, and then you can Fate Seal, you know, willy-nilly.
Yep.
You don't have to worry about potentially having to bounce a blocker out of the way if you have to attack. Now,
Lightning Bolt off the top here for Pikula.
Yep.
We've seen him make this attack before. See him going to make it again here. Not sure if he's attacking Jace or okay, so he is going to attack Jace, and Marshall is perfectly fine with that, which is very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, well, his attack back is lethal.
Yeah.
So
Activate
if he's got
Tar Pit,
that
get
bolt,
in.
he's got to use it on the Tar Pit. So now
Pikula draws another lightning.
I was gonna
bolt?
say that might be.
Oh, okay, Deathrite Shaman changes
Oh
that.
yeah, the Jace Brainstorm was unbelievable. It was the Thoughtseize. He
I
drew
think you actually
bolt.
drew the other bolt.
That's pretty good. Is that enough?
No, I mean Marshall's at 7. So
Oh.
Marshall didn't have that Deathrite Shaman. Yeah, now Pikula has to concede the game. So
Wow.
actually, if Marshall doesn't have the Deathrite Shaman there, Pikula would have drawn the Lightning Bolt to win the game, but Marshall did have the Deathrite Shaman, is going to win game number 1 here.
Well, Marshall did know that he had the Deathrite, so you know his line was completely fine. That Brainstorm off of the Jace, that turn when he went like sacrifice my Jace to bounce, followed up with Jace Brainstorm. That Brainstorm was like the Thoughtseize to get rid of the Tarmogoyf in hand, the Snapcaster Mage to then follow up with the Plow, and then the Deathrite to chump on the last turn to win the race. That's nice. That is a nice top 3.
Oh, 3 spells are good?
Yeah.
Okay. Can't wait to see what you have to say next.
That's why I'm here. That's why they pay me the big bucks to be here with you.
We're going to take a look at the sideboards here. Pikula is going to be on the play of this game. You see 2 Rough Tumbles, 2 Flusterstorms, 1 Pithy Needle, 1 Tormod Script, to go along with 2 Ancient Grudges, a Pyroblast, a Red Elemental Blast, a Life in the Loam, 3 Submerges, and a Scavenging Ooze. I think the first card he probably goes for is Submerge, and then we kind of go from there.
Yeah, as we saw earlier today, you know, in these types of matchups, Tarmogoyf, and as we saw just there in that first game, Tarmogoyf is the most important card. You might think that Jace is the most important card, but you know that costs 4. Pikula's hoping to end the game before then.
Don't ever want Jace to come in.
Yeah, exactly. And Tarmogoyf is the one that he's like the bouncer. You know, he stands there with his arms crossed and just says, you know, no, we're gonna play a little longer. This Jace is coming in, and being able to submerge that blocker, keep attacking for free and super tempo gainer. You're still getting it's still a 1-for-1 because you know you're blanking the draw by putting it on top. So it's a 1-for-1 that's super positive, tempo positive. Definitely one of the more important cards. We talked about blasts earlier. You know, you don't want to dilute your deck too much, but also being able to blast, say, a Jace or a Force of Will on a key Tarmogoyf or something else like that. You know, a Snapcaster that's going to get a Sword for Plowshares. Blasting those cards is very, very good. So, while it may not be as good against, say, Shardless Bug, I think the Snapcaster deck, the blasts gain a lot of value. I would definitely like to see those come in. And then finally, Life from the Loam is an interesting one, because not only does it make your Wastelands way better, because you can just lock them, but also it's good against Wasteland, because they can't, you know, waste your red or whatever and, you know, bury you. And we saw a ton of duels and Wastelands from Marshall, so I would imagine that's coming in as well.
Yeah, when you're this 4-color deck, I think it's pretty easy to think, okay, I can try to do a Wasteland locking with Life in the Loam.
Yep,
and we
exactly.
have seen a lot of rug decks in the past play just 1 Life in the Loam to kind of be like a little miser's card. They can also find it when they have Brainstorm and Ponder and, you know, Singleton Thought Scour as well, targeting themselves. So it's not out of the ordinary to actually find that card through the manipulation, and it lets you actually craft a different game plan.
Exactly. Here on the other side, Chris Marshall, we see the Force of Wills in the sideboard, you know, something that's finally caught on in the past couple years. It took a long time, but sideboarded Force of Wills, definitely the cool thing to do nowadays, it seems. So those are on the board. Some of those might come in. I mean, you know, we've seen the control decks with a lot more card advantage be willing to take the hit on the card advantage from the Force of Will for the tempo that it allows you to sort of get like a Tarmogoyf or a Submerge on your Tarmogoyf, you know, those types of plays that are really, really tempo positive for the opponent. You know, you're willing to take a hit in the card advantage department because you have so much more than your opponent and so many more high impact spells that what really is crucial is to get to the point where you can take over.
Sure.
And taking a card advantage hit early for a little tempo isn't the worst thing. So wouldn't mind seeing those. Would also understand if they stayed on the board because, you know, it does hurt a little when you have to like force a will a 1/1 for 1, you know. Then we also see Abrupt Decays. Those are definitely coming in. As we said, Tarmogoyf is the most important card, and to uncounterably kill it is quite nice. Karakas, Jace Bellerin, probably not coming in. Umezawa's JT, probably not coming in, but, you know, it is a possible, like, theoretical thing you could bring in.
A little bit slow, especially when you can't search for it with Stoneforge Mystic.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't have access to that card. His White Splash is pretty much just for Swords of Plowshares, so I don't really love that.
Yeah, I would say that card is more for the Mother of Runes decks or, like, Elves and Goblins rather than these aggressive decks with more robust creatures. Engineered Plague, pretty much the same. Disenchant, no real targets for Pikula. Thoughtseize, not the best against these aggressive decks. And Surgical Extractions, also not so great. So not much changes, probably just a couple Abrupt Decays for Chris Marshall.
So Pikula's going to start off with a Delver of Secrets on turn 2, led off with the Polluted Delta. Has the Delver now. You see Chris Marshall's hand. He's got Dark Confidant, Swords of Plowshares, a Vendilion Click. Just wants to get that mana base online and rolling. Pikula's going to look at the top card of his deck. It is a miss. It is another Delver of Secrets. Well, the first one can come in.
Yep. I have to say that Pikula's line in the first couple turns of, like, waiting a turn to play the Delver and then playing the Delver and leaving up the mana and not cracking the fetch, it's just, like, reeks of Stifle.
Yeah.
So, and Marshall, you know, sniffs that out. It's pretty obvious. So he is not cracking his fetch until he absolutely needs to or can somehow minimize the damage, you know, choke Pikula's mana on a key turn, etc.
There's Dark Confidant, and now Pikula's going to reveal for Delver. He's going to reveal for one at a time, it looks like here.
And this is actually huge, because if he flips both these Delvers, I actually caught a glimpse of a Rough Tumble in Pikula's hand, which, now that the Delvers are insectile aberrations, they are flying, so the rough side of Rough Tumble no longer hits it, only 2 damage to non-flyers, so you can take out the Dark Confidant without having to kill both of your own Delvers, which obviously isn't ideal.
So people wonder why they aren't just playing Pyroclasm, and here's why.
Yes, the exact scenario.
Yes.
It's not because, you know, maybe in some games they cast Tumble.
Yes.
No, it's
I'd like to be a part of a game where they cast Tumble. With,
that would be awesome.
The deck only has like actual 3/6 like 10 actual lands.
Yeah.
Like, you need 6 of those. Take down your dragon. So we're going to see a Ponder here from Pikula.
Interesting sequencing. Wonder what I mean, I have to think that he has Stifle here. Or at least paint a beautiful picture.
Yeah, we see the Stifle.
Okay,
now.
It is Stifle, yeah. So I have to assume that the turn. Oh, Submerge. Sure, I mean, what's he going to do next turn?
We got Stifle coming right there. Yeah, get that out of here. Submerge that, you get no land, and I get to get in for 6, and you don't have a white source.
And then, like, what's he going to do? Not cast his Dark Confidant, and then he can tumble it rough it next turn?
Yep. So some nice sequencing here. Here comes the Underground Sea, and as you said, is he going to cast Bob again? He also has that Vendilion Click in his hand. You see the couple copies of Swords of Plowshares. He needed that fetch land to be able to find them, and he doesn't have it. So Pikula's going to draw a card. He draws a Ponder.
See, look at how much better Submerge would be on the Vendilion. So you could have, you know, roughed the Dark Confidant, saved the Submerge for this turn.
Well, he has
gotten us a lot more damage. He does? Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Wasn't that interesting?
You can submerge that one too, with the effect on the stack. So you see Chris trying to decide what he wants to do with that Vendilion Click ability on the stack. If it targeting him is fine, because he does have a Brainstorm in his hand. So, you know, he's looking at his hand saying, am I okay with this happening or not?
Seems like, you know, yeah.
He says, I'm good with it. My hand's actually quite good.
Yeah, and quite resilient to a Vendilion Click. Like, it doesn't really matter what you take. If you take the Rough to protect your Dark Confidant, like, you're just going to die. If you take one of the cantrips, it doesn't really matter. Like, they're going to cantrip anyway, and I have another. Like, definitely agree with not doing anything there. Waiting till the end step to Brainstorm to make sure that you can close it out. I really like the way that Pikula sequenced this game.
So now we're going to see a Brainstorm here in the second main phase. Look at a couple cards, put a couple back. Does have the Fetch Land and Polluted Delta to be able to clear away and make this a great Brainstorm instead of a mediocre one. There's a Wasteland, take care of Bayou.
And a Daze in hand. So the window of things, relevant things that Chris Marshall can do here is quite small. Because he would need to have basically another green source plus Abrupt Decay, or like a white and the source of plowshares we know about.
Polluted Delta sacrificed. Going to clear that Brainstorm. Going to cast it in a Mongoose, and we're looking at what is close to a lethal attack. Going to count the graveyard here, tap that Tropical Island, which he does do, and he is over threshold, and Marshall's going to pick it up. So Pikula is going to tie this one up. After a very well-played game, we'll be going on to game number 3 here in round 7.
If you're wondering what a game looks like where Rug Delver executes its game plan that we've been talking about so much, that's the one.
Yeah.
Tie up their mana, choke their mana, and just apply a ton of pressure early, tempo-positive plays, and get the opponent dead. Very rarely in like Standard do players die with like 6 cards in hand. Lands in play, 6 cards in hand. They just didn't have time to play.
Yeah, unless they got mana screwed. That's about the only time that happens.
Yeah, exactly. But Rug Delver makes you mana screwed, and that's what we saw there. Rough Temple is an interesting choice. Takes out Dark Confidant, Snapcaster Mage, and Deathrite Shaman.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice 2-of to have in the sideboard. It's got a lot of applications across the format, too. As you said, combo elves, goblins. Pyroclasm effect is actually quite good in Legacy for the same reasons that a Tarfire effect is actually quite good. 2 damage is actually just a good thing to be doing in Legacy, and if you can do 2 damage across the board against certain decks, I mean, it really...
All of your guys are not mine.
Yeah, it really cuts up these tribal decks
Absolutely.
In a big way. The only one that it doesn't really slice and dice up is Merfolk because the Lords work so well with each other. But I think that the Rug Delver deck is actually pretty good against Merfolk because of cards like Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, you saw Bolts and Blasts.
Yeah.
And that is definitely the type of game that Marshall is going to try to avoid happening. As I said, winning the die roll, absolutely huge. Being on the play for game 3 is Chris Marshall going to try and get his mana base established so he can play his more powerful, higher impact cards.
So Marshall being on the player is probably a pretty big deal again, so that he, when Rug is on the play, they're able to get those mana denial strategies online. Stifle, get a clock in play, get your Stifles in line, turns your Dazes on from being, good to great.
Yeah.
Everything favors Rug Delver when it's on the play. It's how it plays when it's on the draw. When the opponent actually gets to do something like go turn 1, fetch land, crack, don't have to worry about a Stifle, play a Deathrite Shaman, like we saw in game 1. You better bolt this now or I'm going to get a big mana advantage against you, which you don't want anyone to be doing against you in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to play a land in Deathrite on the first turn before the Rug Delver player has anything is just wasting the land is horrible, bolting the Deathrite is horrible, playing a threat is really bad. It's just completely optionless. No really profitable plays. You have to. You're already digging yourself out of a hole when all they did was play a Birds of Paradise.
Yeah. Which is really saying something for the power level of Deathrite Shaman.
Yeah.
Where it changes how much you have to play.
And the volatility of the Rug Delver deck. It's one of those decks that its win percentage fluctuates wildly, by tens of percents, whether it wins the roll or not.
Both players happy with their 7. Chris Marshall here.
Marshall's on 6, actually.
He's on 6? Thank you. He's going to go Tropical Island into Bayou into pass. Thought Scour's going to turn over a Delver of Secrets and a Rough Tumble. Going to give Chris a brand new one. Draws his card for the turn. There's a Flooded Strand. You see Pikula keeping up Stifles like crazy in this matchup.
Yep, he's got Brainstorm, Stifle, Daze, Submerge, and I think a Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, I think he has a Tarmogoyf as well.
Lots of options. And he chooses to pass. He leaves up Stifle and can Brainstorm Fetch here. Leaves his options open. He has the Rough Tumble for that Deathrite Shaman. He can also Brainstorm looking for a Bolt, a much more mana-efficient answer. And that looks like what he's going to do. Mongoose and another fetch land and something else. So now you're at the point where I can kill the Deathrite, but he's already at 2 mana and this fetch lands that I have to hold up Stifle to deal with for the rest of the game. And if I spend my turn Rough Tumbling, is that going to lead to a favorable position? And it feels like he can Stone Rain him out, and goes for the rough.
So 2 damage, get that Deathrite Shaman out of here, sacrifice that. Pikula obviously cannot reach fast enough for that Flooded Strand. Stifle that business.
Oh, that's so disheartening as the bug player when you crack your fetch and there's like, I have responses.
Yeah. Don't even think about it. Get that out of here.
And 1 mana Stone Rain, still pretty good. Umaza's Jite, so he did bring it in.
And Marshall actually kind of induced there a little bit, sacrificing the fetch land. Now he's going to search with this next fetch land, and he has a Liliana of the Veil in his hand, which is quite a good card against Pikula's deck, as it is typically a singleton threat deck.
Yeah.
Normally the threats are out one at a time, be it a Tarmogoyf, a Mongoose, or a Delver of Secrets. It's very difficult for that deck because they only have 12 to be able to put out multiple threats at once.
Yep.
But if you go with Umazawa's Jite, I am very surprised
That
by
is
that.
surprising. With no creature to equip the Jite, it's not really even a plan yet. Liliana and upticking there really puts Pikula's draw to the test. Like, can you muster a bunch of guys, and especially with Decay, even if Pikula is able to play 2 creatures, you go Decay your Tarmogoyf, Edict your Mongoose, with your Liliana still at 2. And a handful of cards where you're kind of grinding your opponent down with a higher impact library. Seems like that would be a pretty good spot, but trying to go for the higher risk Umazawa's Jite line, and if he can get that online, it's quite good. But otherwise, it is he might end up kicking himself for not just playing that Lily when he could once it gets spell pierced or whatever.
So now Abrupt Decay is going to take care of Tarmogoyf. If you see Pikula kind of taking a look, he might just smurge his own guy, which is actually what's going to happen.
Cute.
So a little bit of card disadvantage, but his thought process is basically that this card is far too important for me to let die to an Abrupt Decay. And it's just going to pass the turn back with 4 mana available, as Marshall's going to draw and play a Liliana Veil. Looks like he's playing around Spell Pierce a little bit here, is what maybe his thought process was. So now Liliana's going to go down.
And this is going to get stifled for sure.
That's going to get stifled, yep, which is a pretty gosh darn good stifle target. So untap, draws Tarmogoyf, take care of Liliana, follow up, play the Tarmogoyf, kick it back.
Trade stifle for a Liliana? Yes, please.
Absolutely. Tarmogoyf for the draw here for Marshall. He is empty-handed.
Pretty much the best possible for him there. Something huge that he can put the Jit on. And even if Pikula tried to do the, attack my Goyf into your Goyf and bolt to finish yours off, the Umazawa's Jite counters can finish off Pikula's Tarmogoyf, and then you're sort of at even game with, Mongoose versus a Jite with a counter where any creature really stabilizes.
So we're going to see a block, we're going to see some trading here, and the Jit is going to take care of the Tarmogoyf. So the Jit counter has 1 left. Marshall just drew a land for the turn, and now no Mongoose. Get on in there. That's what that's going to need to do.
What does a Mongoose sound like?
Exactly how I did.
I was gonna make a Mongoose sound effect, but I literally don't know what that is.
And so Inquisition of Kozilek off of the top.
Man,
Pikula taking a look. Dazed and Stifled. Both of those cards pretty poor right now. Taking the Stifle, basically doesn't want anything to happen with Jace. But Daze is very, very poor right now. And Pikula needs to actually ride, and this is a pretty big top deck. Draws a Nimble Mongoose.
With. That is so good that I actually immediately looked at Chris Marshall's sideboard for like a Perish or something.
Engineered Explosive, something like that. Drew another land for the turn, did Marshall. Now Marshall's at 3. He can bump himself up to 5. What's the draw step this turn? He draws a Ponder.
The redraws.
Need a little bit of help. Hit 1, hit 2, hit 3. Not there. Swords of Plowshares, Wasteland, and Inquisition go back. Gonna need a nice shuffle.
Chris Marshall, come on down. I mean, Liliana's like one of the cleaner answers to the Mongoose, but since he didn't do it while Pikula was tapped out, he was able to get it low enough, or it was already low, and there's the hand. That the Stifle on the Edict was able to protect the Mongoose. The Mongoose was able to then attack the Liliana back down, and the Submerge My Own Tarmogoyf. Not a play you see very often, but I mean, every time we've seen these matchups, wow, look at how happy Pikula is to win that. And I'm sure his phone is blowing up.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing you said at the top is he really wanted to win so that he could qualify for the Invitational in Somerset. That's at the back end of July, and it looks like he might be able to double draw